Welcome to this interview series. My name is Ryan and my channel is here to help you spiritually grow in Jesus Christ. I want to show you that we're doing a live interview series now with Christian leaders who are serving God in the midst of this health emergency. As a leader of the men's group Journeyman at Cornerstone Church on Grand Island, New York, I've been fortunate to work with Pastor Jon Shuerholz. We're going to talk with him about leading a church during a global pandemic. By the end of this interview, we should all know a little bit more about how churches are responding to the pandemic and how we can get involved. And now let's bring up Pastor Jon Shuerholz of Cornerstone Church on Grand Island, New York. How are you, Pastor Jon?
Great. It's great to be here, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you could come on and share with us some of your experience. I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot from you about what this situation is like in more detail because of your position as a church leader, and also in how this situation compares with other crises the church has faced. So to start us off, can you tell us a bit about your experience in church ministry?
Sure. I served in a small church outside of New York City for a number of years as a youth director and children's director as a volunteer. And then I moved to Western New York, and in 1992, I became the youth pastor at the Kenmore Alliance Church in Tonawanda and served there for 6.5 years. And then I served as an associate pastor for 2.5 years, then took over the role as a senior pastor from 2000 up until 2017. In 2017, I started working for my denomination, working at coaching and helping churches across New York State. Just develop plans for reaching their communities and growing healthy. And so that's what I did for 2.5 years. So that's my experience.
That's great. Thanks for telling us about that. I think that it's great you've been in Western New York for quite a while, but also reaching out to different churches around the state. You know, that's some great chances to interact with others and how they're dealing with situations. And I was wondering, since you've been through all those things, how would you compare the current circumstances with other challenges that you've seen over the years?
Yeah, the two most similar cases I can think nationally were 9/11. That just rocked everyone's world. Airlines were shut down. If you were alive then, there was everything on television just ceased to be. And so it's similar to this situation. It was just like everyone's talking about, everyone's attention is focused on 9/11 and the events of 9/11. And so that really, to me, is most similar as far as everyone's talking, everyone's thinking about COVID, the whole world. Yep. I also work overseas with a bunch of churches, and all those folks and all my friends in different countries in the Middle East are all talking about COVID. COVID is the number one thing, just kind of like 9/11 was. Yep. Also, when I think about the way things are here, I think about the economic crisis in 2007, 2008. And that, again, that whole time when everything was shaken, people were normal life, that the stock market, whether or not banks were going to fail, the verge of complete economic collapse, everyone was talking about that. Everyone was focused on that. And it kind of shook people's security, kind of what's going on now. People's security in kind of things and government and science is kind of being shaken, kind of was with that financial crisis, as well as now financially. And then I was here in Western New York during what we called the October surprise. Oh, yeah. And that was a really bad snowstorm in October. And, people lost their power for, I think, up to 2 weeks, some people. Our church lost power for a week. We had to cancel services. So it reminded me kind of, having to cancel church. It reminded me of more of a local thing. It wasn't obviously a national thing, but, there are people in our church that lost power for a week. They were bailing themselves, basements, and some people didn't lose any power. And so it was just kind of the same with this crisis. Some people it really affects, some people it doesn't affect so much, yet it affected the church and how we were going to do ministry. We changed how we did ministry during that. For that week, 2 weeks, we really had to do ministry differently, kind of on the fly. So that kind of reminds me. So each one of those situations reminds me a little bit of, kind of how we had to kind of play it. We had to change what we were planning to do because of events and circumstances.
Right. Having to be responsive in these kind of unforeseen circumstances. Yeah, that's great. And I think that now that you've been at Cornerstone for a while and you've had a couple of months of dealing with this crisis, I'm wondering about how Cornerstone's had to adjust to the restrictions that have been put in place because of the coronavirus.
Well, I mean, churches are used to getting together, and we're kind of focused on getting together. That's what we do. We get together, whether it's in Journeyman, our men's group, whether it's small groups, whether it's church on Sunday, kids programs, youth programs. A lot of our calendar as a church is based on gathering people together. And all of a sudden, obviously in March, we were told not to gather, and that was just what do we do? Well, it was kind of easy. Just when the government kind of came down, we can't gather, we just chose not to gather. And fortunately, we had an online presence. We have a website. We were streaming our services, recording our services. So really, we just had to kind of like shift everything to online. So what we did is we just kind of more online learning opportunities. We had to produce and publish videos. We're trying to be more available as a staff. We work deemed necessary, so some of us continue to come to the office, but we did a lot via phone and through emails and through Zoom. So reduced ministry in some areas, increased in other areas. So Donna, for example, in our children's ministry, she's producing, multiple events during the week for children and for families with small children. The youth group, Zoom, all these things kind of had to be altered. And then services, we went from kind of recording kind of a normal service on the early days, and then when they began kind of making even more restrictions, we went to kind of filming, in very small groups. So we kind of went to maybe we had 10 or 15 people at the church filming, all the way down to we're having 2 and 3 people filming the services. And then we went for kind of live worship to then kind of pre-recorded worship, because again, it gets more difficult with band members and those things.
Right. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of changes, especially going to online. But it's good that the church did have something in place so you could begin to use it. But it's definitely a lot more of the technology-based production, even creating videos rather than just live streaming. So,
and we also done a lot more just phone calling. I mean, we try to reach out to people via text, via phone calls, emails. Please communicate with us. We can't see you on Sunday to hear or see how you're doing. We need to hear from you. We need to get some. So we try to touch base with some folks, delivering some things to people and that kind of stuff. So some of the things we've done differently.
Right. With phone calls, I know younger people, they tend to be on text messages a lot more than phone calls. Have you find it difficult to get people onto speaking and phone conversations versus just text?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of use every mode that people find familiar. I mean, really, there's probably 3 major communication means, or 4. There's email, text, phone call. There's also Facebook and Facebook messaging, and obviously tweeting and all the, Snapchat, all the different platforms that younger people use. So we try to, incorporate whatever we can to have some of us actually had to, kind of re-engage with Facebook. We have a Facebook prayer group. We have a Facebook kind of community group that's really grown as a place to communicate what's going on at the church. And so, yeah, those kind of platforms with social media that, we're not all comfortable with, and a lot of churches and pastors kind of speak against, all of a sudden became the means by which we had to communicate. So I've noticed even people that weren't on Facebook are joining Facebook and kind of checking it more often. I had pared down my social media presence, and I've had to ramp it up since the COVID experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel the same way. Having to be on social media more, even if you had sort of backed away from it, or maybe a certain platform you didn't use as much, you sort of had to engage again. Yeah, it makes sense. And I think that's a very responsive way to continue to connect with people, even though you can't physically connect. So that's a great thing. I think some people who are a little reluctant maybe should think of this as like a little more of a prompting, like, hey, get online somehow, because that's a good way to connect.
Yeah, I think that's it's people that are not willing to do technology. It's made it more difficult to engage with them. I got to be honest. That's one of the big things that we've seen, is that engaging people with Zoom and with those kind of things are just, if people aren't willing to kind of learn. I had to learn a bunch of stuff. I wasn't really a Zoom guy, and I had to learn all this stuff. So it's important that we learn those things, and we figure out how to do those things and make those more effective. And challenging people. We've been challenged. We just answer your emails. We can actually see people who we do a mass email with information about the church, and we can actually see who opens up their email. And you'd be surprised how many people don't even just open up. Please just open up your email, so we can communicate with you.
Right. Just check an email. That's you think of as kind of a basic, but yeah, some people may not be even doing that. I'm wondering if during this time, because a lot of people think of it as a lot of negative and difficulties and challenges, but are there some opportunities for ministry you've seen that maybe you didn't expect at first?
Oh, definitely. I think there's been opportunities to actually engage with some people that are willing to do the technology, willing to take a step. We've actually engaged with some people, even through journeymen that I didn't really know before, and I feel like I know them a lot better now that we've been through this, because they were willing to kind of jump onto some of these platforms and to stay connected. There are people that in my neighborhood that I didn't even know their names or haven't talked to them a lot. And I've had opportunities to witness to people. My neighborhood wants to get together, kind of, all part in our yards and in a circle in cars and kind of have a service every week. So we've been kind of having a church service every week in my neighborhood. And most of those people, 3/4 of them don't go to my church, and probably over half don't go to any church. So we've been having an opportunity just to, to speak and so to share and to worship. We have a lady in our cul-de-sac that's got a guitar, and she's a worship leader. So she sings, and I bring a message every week. So that's an incredible opportunity. We're doing prayer walks. Matt File, our associate pastor, kind of just initiated a whole prayer walking thing. As you're out there walking, you're trying to get exercise, trying to do something, pray for your neighborhoods. And we had a woman who walked around the entire Grand Island and prayed for the whole community.
Wow.
And so she's in different days, she spent time just walking different sections of the island until she did praying for the entire island.
Wow,
so I think those are some neat opportunities that we're having that we didn't have before.
Right. Yeah, that's great. I think you're right. Like you said, the men's group Journeyman, if you guys have been more active than we sort of had them before, and now you sort of, like you said, are getting to know them better. They're sharing things that you didn't know about them on chats and things like that.
We also started a food pantry. That was kind of a neat opportunity. We didn't have one before, but we wanted to be available. And guys have been guys and gals have been kind of organizing that in our church and kind of all volunteer. We got donated some food. We've been distributing that when we have people call us and need something. We take it out there. So that's great. That's an opportunity to serve. I've also seen other churches, not just our local church, but other churches, the platform of preaching online more. All of a sudden people say, well, I can see 2 or 3 sermons on a Sunday. I can see your sermon. I can see somebody else's sermon. I have people, that knew me and said, hey, I was able to see you preach on this week, and I saw your teaching. And then we're able to share those messages. Hey, if I hear a message that really connected with me, and maybe I know a friend that's going through that issue, I can just forward a link. So I think people are more open to share, to kind of view, to see what's going on. I think those are some opportunities that we didn't really foresee. And also, I just want to say this. Our community has really been faithful in giving. You think if people don't show up to church, they're not going to give. Well, that's not true. We've seen that the faithfulness of our folks to give and to provide, so that the church has been able to keep its staff. And, obviously we're reducing spending and we're being careful, but we haven't really experienced the hardships of, a lot of other small businesses. We haven't, because people have been real faithful, because they see that we're making an effort to continue to minister. I have a couple friends, churches, that they had their best month ever in giving during COVID. So I really think some of the people in the church are stepping up with generosity and providing. So, I don't know what the long-term effects are going to be if we have an economic slowdown. But right now, I'm just praising God for a number of my friends experiencing some real blessings from their people.
Yeah, that's really great to hear that people are still, being generous and faithful to giving, and the church can't operate without people doing that. So that's really great to hear. I'm wondering about for you, what would you say would be the most difficult aspect of the crisis as a leader of a church?
I think one of the things is the polarization of opinions, right? We were already in a polarized society, right? There's the right and the left. There's CNN. There's Fox. There's all the things in between. And so I think what now has happened is we now have a new polarization point. It's this whole, is the government overreacting, underreacting? Is it a power grab? Is it a conspiracy? Personally, am I a person who tends to be more concerned about health and sanitation and cleanliness, a person who less. We have, obviously there's a whole spectrum of opinions about things and within the church. So I think there's a real potential for division and conflict that maybe wasn't there before. Another thing we can disagree about. And so I think that's something that, that's a challenge to kind of wade through that in leadership and with a staff, with people that have all sorts of different ideas. Then you got people with different immune systems, people that are compromised, all those kind of things. I think that's again, even like now that we're all on Facebook, we all see people's opinions on Facebook, and that
True.
can be negative. You can create conflict resolution issues and unity issues. I think lack of feedback has been a huge struggle for us. Like, just seeing views doesn't tell us whether or not that had an impact. You know, when you're preaching and you hear people comment or come back to you and say, "Yeah, that really touched me," that really, you know, and it's such a limited audience of people that are giving us feedback. Preaching to an empty room is really hard, or even just preaching to a couple people, it's very difficult. And so we're not used to the camera thing as being our chief audience. We're used to having people kind of share with us and giving us feedback and seeing lives. Another big, huge challenge is what's next. Closing decision was difficult, but man, reopening and how you reopen, and the state is so confused. The federal government is so confused. Our leaders don't seem to have a real clear plan about how to do things. As a result, we're kind of confused and left on what to do. And so we're trying to, as leaders, kind of negotiate those waters of, you know, we want to get fellowship because we think it's good for people's spiritual, mental, emotional health. We want to start meeting again in person, but we also want to obey the government and we want to keep people safe. So all these things are kind of giving us difficulties. And are people really wanting to get discipled? Are increased views of sermons, is that resulting in actually changed lives?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. How are people doing? How is the fear of gathering groups gonna be a lasting effect in churches? Are people just not gonna want to come out anymore? I know that businesses that restaurants and bars and casinos and entertainment and movie theaters, they're all wondering, are people even going to come back?
That's
or is
right.
there going to be a percentage of people that are just afraid of gathering together? Children's and youth ministries, what do you do? They don't social distance.
Right.
So how are we going to do children's ministry moving forward? That's one of the biggest struggles we're having. Adults, you can say, yeah, keep a mask on, keep distance, but what do you do with kids? Those are some of the real challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, those sound like important things to think about. I think, looking forward, the government isn't sure how to loosen the restrictions, and the organizations then are trying to figure out how do we do it, according to the government's rules. But then if people don't want to come to things because they're afraid, it could be another barrier. So, yeah, that seems like a big problem. I was wondering about some advice that you'd want to give to somebody who's struggling to stay connected to their church during this time.
Well, I would say, reach out, learn a platform, jump on. I mean, we started a women's study last week. Amy File started one in our church. It started out like 15. I think it's up to 22. I see some women jumping into that. Stretch yourself, call people, pray with people, talk to people. Figure out ways you can meet, even if it's like in a parking lot, or away from each other. Figure out, with masks on. I don't know. Figure out ways to be safe and to see others and connect with others. I think part of the thing is just kind of, reaching out to folks, sending texts. Hey, can you want to sit together and talk? Can we pray? I think those are some of the ways that I think, talk to pastors. We're looking for people to talk to and to help, so I think it's don't feel afraid to give us a call and a staff member in the church that you feel close to, or a member of the church, an elder's wife, a leader that you respect. If you're hurting, reach out. Get regular with something, whether it's prayer walking, whether it's talking to people regularly on the phone, doing check-ins. I mean, me and Ryan have been meeting. We continue to meet, right, Ryan?
That's right.
Even through this, because we just Zoom or we call each other or we FaceTime. We figure out ways we're going to meet. So I think that's kind of, some ways that I would encourage people. If you're down, don't do this alone.
Right.
And I know I've talked to really mature, godly people who are really suffering at this time emotionally. And so it's not weird. It's not odd. God meant us to be in community. So I would say try your best and as the best way you can, the safest way you can to reach out and do those things.
Right. I think that's great advice. Yeah. There's a situation now where we don't kind of accidentally bump into people at church. So we need to, give them a call, give them a text, sort of take that initiative a bit. And I think you're right. Reach out to some people and continue to be connected, even though it's more difficult in some ways. I want to ask just finally if you'd share with us the events at Cornerstone Church. What goes on there, a little bit of a rundown for the week, and then people will know how to connect with the church.
Well, obviously we've kind of entered phase one, which doesn't do a whole lot to change kind of what we're doing right now. I want to say for us as a church, we're going to, as long as there are any restrictions, we're going to maintain an online presence as we have now. That is multiple opportunities for you to join online during the week. And that includes obviously a Sunday morning. We're going to continue to provide a Sunday morning worship service that will be online by Sunday morning. You can watch whenever you want with your family or whoever that you watch it with. We're going to, at Sunday night, we're going to have a Going Deeper study through the website, an interactive time to kind of go deeper with the sermon. That's 7 p.m. Sunday nights. Those things are going to continue throughout the whole, whatever there's still restrictions on people. We have Monday night prayer meeting through a Zoom link. Find that Zoom link and jump in our prayer meeting. We do a time together of prayer every Monday night. Colton has youth group 4 p.m. for high school on 4 p.m. Zoom meeting. Wednesday we have a teaching that's produced and released, and then we're going to have a 7 p.m. discussion time on that in the evening. So that's already on our website, and then we're going to have a discussion on that. Wednesday, that's Wednesday. We also have children's teaching available on Wednesday for Donna. That's available. Thursday, we have our Journeyman's group through a YouTube channel, your YouTube channel, Ryan, and we were able to have men get together there. And then this new women's study that Amy's doing is also available. Thursday, they have a middle school Zoom meeting at 6 p.m. And Donna also does pre-K story time as well as a Sunday morning thing for children. So I think there's lots of opportunities to jump in. And I just want to say, as we start kind of phasing in, the next thing we're going to try, and we're going to try it this Sunday, is we're going to do a drive-in church. Drive-ins have been open now in Western New York, and church, Evangel Church, had their services last weekend at the drive-in and transit. We're going to have drive-in. We're going to try a drive-in church. Everyone stay in your car. Please stay in your car. It's going to be a 45-minute service. If you can handle 45 minutes without having to go to the bathroom, please come. 45 minutes, then we're going to dismiss everybody. We're going to be in the parking lot. We're going to transmit over the radio. We have a low frequency, a low power wattage transmitter. Everyone can turn on the radios and listen and sing and worship together, kind of in your cars. The next stage might be moving outside, doing outside services, but that's not going to be for at least another phase yet. So for at least a couple of weeks, we're probably going to do just stay in your car, come to the service. And if you don't like that, you're not feeling comfortable, you can't. Somebody's told us this week, they said, well, I'm going to get out. I'm going to be too tempted to get out. Okay, so we're not coming. So I appreciate that person. Other people said, I don't feel safe. Stay home.
Right.
Stay home. And I can't last 45 minutes in the car. My kids are going to be crazy. Fine. We're still going to have everything online. But we're going to try it this week. We're going to try an outdoor gathering in cars, stay in cars, nobody getting out of their cars. And we're going to have worship, and we'll have the word this Sunday. So again, I think as schools start opening and as other things start opening, we're going to provide extra cleaning. When are we going to actually move back into the sanctuary? We don't know. When are we going to actually move back into the building and have children's ministries, youth ministries again? I don't know.
Right.
Those are all things that the elders are praying for and kind of week to week making decisions about.
Right. Well, thanks a lot for sharing us about these events. I hope people can take advantage of them. There's a lot going on at the church for sure. And then starting with the weekend, Sunday morning, drive-in church as a way to move things forward. Yeah, that's great. 10:30 a.m. Hope some people will be able to come there. But like you said, if people are worried about it, it's okay to not come and then just go do the online church at this time as well. So thanks for all this information. And I think a lot of people now have got some good advice for how to remain connected to their churches. And we see how you're working to continue to minister, being responsive to the situation. I think it's a great testimony to how, the gospel goes forward in any situation. It doesn't matter which, social distancing or other restrictions we have. There's still ways to minister. And I think you and the church staff are definitely demonstrating that. Let me pray for you. Okay, Pastor Jon?
Yeah, sure.
Lord God, we thank you for this chance to talk with Pastor Jon about what's been going on at Cornerstone Church and how he's been adapting the ministry over, as well as the other staff members. And it seems like, Lord, that thread that's been going on for thousands of years now is still there, that the gospel can continue to go forward in any situation, and that the people that follow you, Lord, will continue to spread your message, spread your love to others, serve others, like the food pantry especially would be such a great example of that. And Lord, we're asking your blessing on Pastor Jon as he continues to lead the church, and that the church will be a group that will respond to his leadership going forward in some of these adjustments, and that they'll be able to continue to grow in their relationship with Jesus Christ throughout this challenging situation. So we appreciate everything you've blessed us with. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thank you, Pastor Jon, for spending this time helping us understand more about what your church is doing and to continue to minister.
Thank you, Ryan.
Got it. I hope this interview was encouraging and eye-opening for you. We're going to be doing more interviews like this over the next few weeks on Thursday nights at 6:30 p.m. To receive a notification of live streams on this channel, push the subscribe button and click on the bell. That will ensure that you get a message that you can click on right when the live stream begins. I also want to recommend that you check out my podcast on iTunes or Spotify for listening to similar content when you can't watch these videos. In fact, this message will be put on there as well, so if you cannot see the video, you can always listen to it on a podcast. Thanks again for joining me in this interview. Stay safe and God bless.